Section 11 of the Iliad for Boys and Girls. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings from the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Lizzie Driver. The Iliad for Boys and Girls by Alfred J. Church. The Battle on the Plain. When it was morning, Zeus called all the gods and goddesses to an assembly on top of Mount Olympus, and said to them, "Now listen to me and obey. No one of you shall help either the Greeks or the Trojans, and mark this: if any god or goddess dares to do so, I will throw him down from here into the outer darkness, and there he shall learn that I am Lord in heaven. Does any one of you think that I am not stronger than you? Yes, than all of you put together. Well, let it be put to the trial. Let down a golden chain from heaven to earth, and take hold of it, all of you, and see whether you can drag me from the throne. You cannot do it, not though you pull with all your might. But if I should choose to put out all my strength, I could lift you up, and the earth and the sea with you, and fasten the chain round one of the peaks of this mountain Olympus here, and leave you hanging in the air." So did Zeus speak, and all the gods sat saying nothing, for they were terribly afraid. But at last Athena said, "Father, we know right well that none of us can stand up against you, and yet we cannot help pitying the Greeks, for we fear they will be altogether destroyed. We will not help them, for this you forbid, but if you will permit, we will give them advice." And Zeus smiled, for Athena was his daughter, and he loved her better than any other among the gods and goddesses, and he gave his consent. Then he had his horses yoked to his chariot, and touched them with his whip, and they flew midway between heaven and earth, till they came to a certain mountain which was called Ida, and was near to Troy. There he sat down and watched the battle, for the time was to come when he would keep the promise which he had made to Thetis. The Greeks ate their food in haste, and freshened themselves for battle, and the Trojans also armed themselves inside the city, and when they were ready the gates were opened and they went out. So the two armies came together, and shield was dashed against shield, and spear against spear, and there was a great clash of arms and shouting of men. So long as the sun was rising higher in the sky, neither of the two prevailed over the other. But at noon Zeus held out in the sky his golden scales, and in one scale he laid a weight for the Trojans, and in the other a weight for the Greeks. Now the weights were weights of death, and the army whose weight was the heavier would suffer most. And lo, the scale of the Greeks sank lower. Then Zeus sent a thunderbolt from the top of Mount Ida into the army of the Greeks, and there was great fear among both men and horses. After this no man could hold his ground. Only old Nestor remained where he was, and he remained against his will, for Paris had killed one of his horses with an arrow, and the chariot could not be moved. So the old man began to cut the traces, that he might free the horse that was yet alive from the horse that was dead. While he was doing this, Hector came through the crowd of fighting men. Then had the old man perished, but Diomedes saw it, and went to help him. But first he called to Ulysses, whom he saw close by, running towards the ships. "Ulysses," he cried, as loudly as he could, "where are you going? Are you not ashamed to turn your back in this way like a coward? Take care that no man thrust you in the back with a spear, and disgrace you for ever. Stop now, and help me to save old Nestor from this fierce Hector." So he spoke, but Ulysses gave no heed to his words, but still fled to the ships, for he was really afraid. When Diomedes saw this he made haste, though he was alone, to go to the help of Nestor. When he got to the place where the old man was, he stopped his chariot and said, "Old friend, the young warriors are too much for you. Leave your own chariot for others to look after, and climb into mine, and see what these horses of King Tros can do, for these are they which I took away from Aeneas. There are none faster or better or easier to turn this way or that. Take these reins in your hand, and I will go against this Hector, and see whether the spear of Diomed is as strong as it was of old." So old Nestor climbed up into his chariot, and took the reins in his hand and touched the horses with the whip, driving straight at Hector. And when they were near him Diomed threw his spear at him. Him he missed, but he struck down his charioteer, and the man fell dead to the ground. Hector was greatly grieved, but he let him lie where he fell, for he must needs find another man to drive the horses. And when he went back from the front to look for the man, then the Trojans went back also, for it was Hector to whom they looked and to whom they followed. But when Diomed would have pursued them, Zeus threw another thunderbolt from Ida. It fell right in front of the chariot, and the horses crouched on the ground for fear, and Nestor let the reins drop from his hand, for he was greatly afraid, and cried, "O Diomed, let us fly. See you not that Zeus is against us? He gives glory to Hector today. Tomorrow maybe he will give it to you. But what he wills that will he do, and no man may hinder him." Diomed answered, "Old sir, you speak wisely, yet it goes to my heart to turn back, for Hector will say, 'Diomed fled before me, seeking to hide himself in the ships. I had sooner that the earth should open her mouth and swallow me up, than I should hear such things.'" But Nestor answered, "O Diomed, be content. Though Hector may call you coward, the sons of Troy will not believe him. No, nor the daughters of Troy, whose brothers and husbands you have tumbled in the dust." So then he turned the horses to fly, and Hector cried when he saw the great Diomed fly before him, "Are you the man to whom the Greeks give the chief place in their feasts, and great cups of wine? They will not so honour you after today. Run, girl, run, coward. Are you the man that was to climb our walls and carry away our people captive?" Diomed was very angry to hear these words, and doubted whether he should flee or turn again to the battle. But as he doubted, Zeus made a great thundering in the sky, and he was afraid. Then Hector called to his horses. By their names he called them, saying, "Come, Whitefoot, and Bayard, and Brilliant, and Flame of Fire. Remember how the fair Andromache has cared for you, putting you even before me, who am her husband. Carry me now as fast as you can, that I may take from old Nestor his shield, which men say is made all of gold, and from Diomed his breastplate, which was wrought for him in the forge of heaven." So the Greeks fled as fast as they could within the wall which they had built for a defence for their ships, for Hector drove them before him, nor was there one who dared to stand up against him. And the space between the wall and the ships was crowded with chariots, and no spirit was left in any man. Then Hera put into the heart of King Agamemnon that he should encourage his people to turn again to battle. So the king stood by the ship of Ulysses, which was in the middle of the ships, for they were drawn up in a long line upon the shore, and cried out, "Shame on you, Greeks! Where are your boats which you boasted before you came to this land, how that one of you would be more than a match for 100, yea, for 200 Trojans? It was easy to say such words when you ate the flesh of bullocks and drank full cups of wine. But now, when you are put to the trial, a single Trojan is worth more than you all. Was there ever a king who had such cowards for his people?" Then the Greeks took courage, and turned again and set upon the Trojans. And the first of all to turn and slay a Trojan was Diomed. He drove his spear through the man's back, for now the Trojans were flying in their turn, and tumbled him from his chariot. And after Diomed came King Agamemnon, and Ajax, and other chiefs. Among them was Teucer, the brother of Ajax, a skilful archer. He stood under the shield of his brother, and Ajax would lift the shield a little, and then Teucer would peer out, and take aim and send an arrow at some Trojan and kill him or wound him. Then he would go back, as a child runs to his mother, and Ajax covered him with his shield. 8 warriors did he hit in this way, and when King Agamemnon saw him, he said, "Shoot on, Teucer, and bring a joy to your people, and to your father. Surely when we have taken the city of Troy, and shall divide the spoil, you shall have the best gift of all, after mine." And Teucer said,
I need no gifts, O king, to make me eager. I have not ceased to shoot my arrows at these Trojans. 8 arrows have I shot, and every one has found its way through some warrior's armour into his flesh. But this Hector I cannot hit." And as he spoke he let fly another arrow at Hector from the sling. Him he did not touch, but slew a son of Priam. And then he shot yet a 10th, and this time he laid low the charioteer who stood by Hector's side. Then Hector's heart was filled with rage and grief. He leant down from his chariot and caught up a great stone in his hand and ran at Teucer, that he might crush him to the earth. And Teucer, when he saw him coming, made haste, and took an arrow from his quiver and fitted it to the sling. But even as he drew back the string to his shoulder, the great stone struck him where the collarbone stands out against the neck and the arm. It broke the bowstring and made his arm and wrist all weak and numb, so that he could not hold the bow. And he fell upon his knees, dropping the bow to the ground. But Ajax stood over him and covered him with his shield, and 2 of his comrades took him up in their arms, and carried him groaning deeply to the ships. When the Trojans saw the great archer carried away from the battle, they took fresh courage, and drove back the Greeks to the ditch, for there was a ditch in front of the wall. And Hector was always in the very front. As a dog follows a wild beast and catches him by the hip or the thigh as he flies, so did Hector follow the Greeks and slay the hindmost of them. Then Hera, as she sat on the top of Olympus, said to Athena, "Shall we not have pity on the Greeks and help them? Let us do it this once if we never do it again. I fear much that they will perish altogether by the hand of Hector. See what harm he has done to them already." Athena answered, "This is also my father's doing. He listened to Thetis when she asked him to do honour to her son Achilles. But perhaps he may now listen to me, and will let me help the Greeks. Make your chariot ready, therefore, and I will put on my armour. So we will go together to the battle. May be that Hector will not be glad when he sees us coming against him." So Hera made her chariot ready, and Athena put on her armour, and took a great spear, and prepared us for battle. Then the 2 mounted the chariot, and the Hours opened the gates of heaven for them, and they went towards Troy. But Zeus saw them from where he sat on the top of Mount Ida, and he called to Iris, who is the messenger of the gods, and said to her, "Go now, Iris, and tell these 2 that they had better not set themselves against me. If they do, then I will lame their horses, and throw them down from their chariot, and break the chariot in pieces. If I do but strike them with my thunderbolt, they will not recover from their hurts for 10 years and more." So Iris made all the haste she could, and met the 2 goddesses on their way, and gave them the message of Zeus. When Hera heard it, she said to Athena, "It is not wise for us 2 to fight with Zeus for the sake of men. Let them live or die as he may think best, but we will not set ourselves against him." So Hera turned the chariot, and they went back to Olympus, and sat down in their chairs of gold among the other gods. Very sad and angry were they. When Zeus saw that they had gone back, he left Mount Ida and went to Olympus, and came into the hall where the gods were assembled. When he saw Hera and Athena sitting by themselves with gloomy faces, he mocked them, saying, "Why do you look so sad? Surely it cannot be that you have tired yourselves by joining in the battle and slaying these Trojans whom you hate so much. But if it is because the thing that I will does not please you, then know that what I choose to happen, that shall happen. Yes, if all the other gods should join against me, still I shall prevail over them." And when Zeus had so spoken, then Athena, for all that her heart was bursting with anger, said nothing. But Hera would not keep silence. "Well do we know, O Zeus, that you are stronger than all the gods. Nevertheless, we cannot but pity the Greeks when we see them perishing in this way." Zeus spake again, "Is that so? Do you pity the Greeks for what they have suffered today? Tomorrow you shall see worse things than these, O Queen. For Hector will not cease driving the Greeks before him, and slaying them till the great Achilles himself shall be moved, and shall rise from his place where he sits by his ships."
And now the sun sank into the sea, and the night fell. The Trojans were angry that the darkness had come and that they could not see any longer. But the Greeks were glad of the night, for it was a shelter to them, and gave them time to breathe. Then Hector called the Trojans to an assembly at the place that was near the river, where the ground was clear of dead bodies. He stood in the middle of the people, holding in his hand a spear 16 feet or more in length, with a shining head of bronze, and a band of gold by which the head was fastened to the shaft. What he said to the people was this: "Hearken, men of Troy, and ye our allies who have come to help us. I thought that today we should destroy the army of the Greeks and burn their ships, and so go back to Troy and live in peace. But night has come and hinders us from finishing our work. Let us sit down, therefore, and rest and take a meal. Loose your horses from your chariots and give them their food. Go some of you to the city and fetch thence cattle and sheep and wine and bread, that we may have plenty to eat and drink. Also fetch fuel, that we may burn fires all the night, that we may sit by them, and also that we see whether the Greeks will try to escape in the night. Truly they shall not go in peace. Many we will kill, and the rest shall, at the least, carry away with him a wound for him to heal at home, that so no man may come again and trouble this city of Troy. The heralds also shall go to the city, and make a proclamation that the old men and boys shall guard the wall, and that every woman shall light a hearth fire, and that all shall keep watch, lest the enemy should enter the city while the people are fighting at the ships. And now I will say no more, but tomorrow I shall have other words to speak to you. But know this, that tomorrow we will arm ourselves, and drive these Greeks to their ships, and, if it may be, burn these ships with fire. Then we shall know whether the bold Diomedes shall drive me back from the wall, or whether he shall be slain with the spear. Tomorrow shall surely bring ruin on the Greeks. I would that I were as sure of living for ever and ever, and of being honoured as the gods are honoured." So Hector spoke, and all the Trojans shouted with joy to hear such words. Then they unharnessed the horses and fetched provender from the city, and also gathered a great store of fuel. They sat all night in the hope of what the next day would bring. As on a calm night the stars shone bright, so shone the watchfires of the Trojans. 1,000 fires were burning, and by each fire sat 50 men. And the horses stood by the chariots, champing oats and barley. So they all waited for morning. End of the battle on the plain. Section 12 of the Iliad for Boys and Girls. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Lizzie Driver. The Iliad for Boys and Girls by Alfred J. Church. The Repentance of Agamemnon. While the Trojans made merry, being full of hope that they would soon be rid of their enemies, the Greeks, on the other hand, were full of trouble and fear, and not one of them was more sad at heart than King Agamemnon. After a while he called to the heralds and told them to go round to the chiefs and bid them come to a council. "Bid them one by one," he said, "and do not proclaim the thing publicly, for I would not have the people know of it." So the chiefs came and sat down, each man in his seat. Not a word did they say, but looked sadly on the ground. At last King Agamemnon stood up and spoke. "O my friends, lords, and rulers of the Greeks, truly Zeus seems to hate me. Once he promised me that I should take this city of Troy and return home in safety, but this promise he has not kept. I must go back to the place from which I came without honour, having lost many of those who came with me. But now, before we all perish, let us flee in our ships to our own land, for Troy we may not take." And when the king had finished his speech, the chiefs sat still, not saying a word, for they were out of heart. But after a while, seeing that no one else would speak, brave Diomedes stood up in his place and said, "O king,
Do not be angry if I say that this talk of yours about fleeing in our ships to our own land is nothing but madness. It was but 2 days since that you called me a coward. Whether this be true, the Greeks, both young and old, know well. I will not say yes or no, but this time I tell you, Zeus has given you to be first among the Greeks, and to be a king among kings. But courage he has not given you, and courage is the best gift of all, and without it all others are of no account. Now, if you are bent on going back, go. Your ships are ready to be launched, and the way is short. But all the other Greeks will stay till they have taken the city of Troy. Ay, and if they also choose to go with you, still I will stay. I and Sthenelus here, my friend. Yes, we two will stay, and we will fight till we make an end of the city. For the gods sent us hither, and we will not go back till we have done the thing for which we came." Then old Nestor stood up in his place and said, "You are a brave man, Diomed, and you speak words of wisdom. There is not a man here but knows that you have spoken the truth. And now, O King Agamemnon, do you seek counsel from the chiefs, and when they have spoken, follow that counsel which shall seem to you wisest and best. But first let them sit down to eat and to drink. Also set sentinels to keep watch along the trench, lest our enemies should fall upon us unawares, for they have many watchfires and a mighty host. Verily this night will either save us or make an end of us altogether." So the king bade his men prepare a feast, and the chiefs sat down to eat and drink. And when they had had enough, Nestor rose up in his place and spoke. "O king, Zeus has made you lord over many nations, and put many things into your hand. Therefore you have the greater need of good counsel, and are the more bound to listen to wise words, even though they may not please you. It was an evil day, O king, when you sent the heralds to take away Briseis from Achilles. The other chiefs did not consent your deeds. Yes, and I myself advised you not to do this thing, but you would not hear. Rather you followed your own pride and pleasure, and shamed the bravest of your followers, taking away from him the prize which he had won with his own hands. Do you, therefore, undo this evil deed, and make peace with this man whom you have wronged, speaking to him pleasant words, and give him noble gifts." King Agamemnon stood up and said, "You have spoken true words, old sir. Truly I acted as a fool that day, I do not deny it. For not only is this Achilles a great warrior, but he is dear to Zeus, and he that is dear to Zeus is worth more than whole armies of other men. See now how we are put to flight when he stands aside from the battle. This surely is the doing of Zeus. And now, as I did him wrong, so I will make amends, giving him many times more than that which I took from him. Hear now the gifts which I will give him. 7 kettles standing on 3 feet, new, which the fire has never touched, 10 talents of gold, and 20 bright cauldrons, and 12 strong horses which have won many prizes for me by their swiftness. The man who had as much gold of his own as these 12 horses have won for me would not be a beggar. Also I will give him some women slaves, skilled with their needle and another work of the hands, who were in my portion of the spoil when we took the island of Lesbos. Yes, and I will send him the maiden Briseis, whom I took from him. And when, by favour of the gods, we shall have taken the city of Troy, and shall divide the spoil, then let him come and choose for himself 20 women, the most beautiful that there are in the city after the fair Helen, for none can be so beautiful as she. And I will give him yet more than this. When we get back to the land of Greece, then he shall be as a son to me, and I will honour him even as I honour my own son Austus. 3 daughters have I in my palace at home. Of these he shall have the one whom he shall choose for his wife, and shall take her to the house of his father Peleus. Nor shall he give any gifts, as a man is used to give when he seeks a maiden for his wife. He shall have my daughter without a price, and more than this, I will give her a great dowry, such as a king has never before given to his daughter. 7 fair cities will I give him, and with each city fields in which many herds of oxen and flocks of sheep are grazing, and vineyards out of which much wine is made. And the people of these cities shall honour him as their lord and master. All these things will I give him, only he will cease from his anger. Let him listen to our prayers, for of all things that are in the world there is but one that does not listen to prayers, and this one thing is death. And this verily is the cause why death is hated of all men. Let him therefore not be as death." When Agamemnon had made an end of his speaking, Nestor said to him, "The gifts which you are ready to give to the great Achilles are such as no man can find fault with. Let us therefore without delay choose men who may go to his tent and offer them to him. Let Phoenix go first, for he is dear to the gods, and Achilles also honours him, for indeed Phoenix has the care of him when he was a child. And with him Ajax the Greater should go, and Ulysses also, and let 2 heralds go with them. And now let the heralds bring water and pour upon our hands, and let each keep silence while we pray to Zeus that he may have mercy on us, and incline the heart of this man to listen to our entreaties." Then the heralds brought water and poured it upon the hands of the chiefs, and they filled the bowls with wine, and each man took his bowl and poured out a little on the ground, praying meanwhile to the gods. And when they had done this they drank and came out from the king's tent. And before they went on their errand, old Nestor charged them what they should say. All of them he charged, but Ulysses most of all, because he was the best speaker of them all. End of the Repentance of Agamemnon.
Section 13 of the Iliad for Boys and Girls. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Lizzie Driver. The Iliad for Boys and Girls by Alfred J. Church. The Embassy to Achilles. So they went along the shore of the sea, and as they went they prayed to the god who shakes the earth, that is to say, the god of the sea, that he would shake the heart of Achilles. And when they came to the camp of the Myrmidons, for these were the people of Achilles, they saw the king with a harp in his hand, the harp he had taken from the city of Thebe, which was also the city of Andromache. He was playing on the harp, and as he played he sang a song about the valiant deeds which the heroes of old time had wrought. And Patroclus sat over against him in silence, waiting till he should have ended his singing. So the 3 chiefs came forward, Ulysses leading the way, and stood before Achilles. And he, when he saw them, jumped up from his seat not a little astonished, holding his harp in his hand. And Patroclus also rose up from his seat, to do them honour. And Achilles said, "You are welcome, my friends. Though I am angry with the king, you are not the less my friends." And when he had said this, he bade them sit down upon chairs that were there, covered with coverlets of purple. And to Patroclus he said, "Bring out the biggest bowl, and mix the wine, and make it as strong and as sweet as you can, and give each of these my friends a cup that they may drink, for there are none whom I love more in this whole army of the Greeks." And this Patroclus did, and when he had mixed the wine, strong and sweet, and had given each man his cup, then he made ready a feast. Nor were they unwilling, though they had but just feasted in the tent of King Agamemnon, for the men of those days were as mighty in eating and drinking as in fighting. And the way that he made ready the feast was this. First he put a great block of wood as close as might be to the fire, and on this he put the back, that is to say, the saddle of a sheep, and the same portion of a fatted goat, and also the same of a well-fed pig. The charioteer of Achilles held the flesh in its place with a spit, and Achilles carved it. And when he had carved the portions, he put each on a skewer. Then Patroclus made the fire burn high, and when the flames had died down, then he smoothed the red hot embers, and put the racks upon the top of them, again the spits with flesh. But first he sprinkled them with salt, and when the flesh was cooked, he took it from the skewers, and put portions of it on the platters. Also he took bread, and put it in baskets, to each man a basket. Then they all took their places for the meal, and Achilles gave the place of honour to Ulysses. But before they began, he signed to Patroclus that he should sacrifice to the gods, and this he did by casting into the fire something of the flesh and of the bread. After this they put forth their hands and took the food that was ready for them. When they had had enough, Ajax nodded to Phoenix, meaning that he should speak and tell Achilles why they had come. But Ulysses perceived it, and began to speak before ever Phoenix was ready to begin. First he filled a cup and drank to the health of Achilles, and then he said,
"Hail, Achilles! Truly we have no lack of feasting, first in the tent of King Agamemnon, and now in yours. But this is not a day to think of feasting, for destruction is close at hand, and we are greatly afraid. This very day the Trojans and their allies came very near to burning our ships, and we are greatly in doubt whether we shall save them, for it is plainly to be seen that Zeus is on their side. What therefore we are come to ask of you is that you will not stand aside any longer from the battle, but will come and help us of old. And truly our need is great, for this Hector rages furiously, saying that Zeus is with him, and not caring for God or man. And even now he is praying that morning may appear, for he vows that he will burn the ships with fire and destroy us while we are choked with the smoke of the burning. And I am greatly afraid that the gods will give him strength to make good his threats, and to kill us all here, far from the land in which we were born. Now therefore stir yourself, if now, before it is too late, you have a mind to save the Greeks. Make no delay, lest it be too late, and you repent only when that which is done shall be past all recalling. Did not the old man Peleus, your father, on the day when he sent you from Phthia, your country, to follow King Agamemnon, lay this charge upon you, saying, 'My son, the gods will give you strength, and will make you mighty in battle if it be their will. But there is something which you must do yourself. Keep down the pride of your heart, for gentleness is better than pride. Also keep from strife, so shall the Greeks, both young and old, love you and honour you. This charge your father laid upon you, but you have not kept it. Nevertheless, there is yet a place of repentance for you, for the king has sent us to offer you gifts great, and many to make up the wrong he did to you. So great and so many are they that no one can say that these are not worthy.' And then Ulysses set forth in order all the things which Agamemnon had promised to give: kettles and cauldrons and gold, and women slaves, and his daughter in marriage, and 7 cities to be her dowry. And when he had finished the list of these things, he said, 'Be content, take these gifts, which indeed no man can say that are not sufficient, and if you have no thought for Agamemnon, yet you should have thought for the people, who perish because you stand aside from the battle. Take the gifts therefore, for by doing so you will have wealth and love and honour from the Greeks, and great glory also, for you will slay Hector, who is now ready to meet you in battle, so proud is he, thinking that there is not a man of all the Greeks who can stand against him.' Achilles answered, 'I will speak plainly, O Ulysses, and will set out clearly what I think is in my heart, and what I intend to do. It does not please me that you should sit there and coax me, one man saying one thing and another man saying another. Yes, I will speak both plainly and truly, for as for the man who thinks one thing in his heart and says another with his tongue, he is hateful to me as death itself. Tell me now, what does it profit a man to be always fighting day after day? It is but thankless work, for the man that stays home has an equal share with the man who never leaves the battle, and men honour the coward even as they honour the brave, and death comes alike to the man that works and to the man who sits idle at home. Look at me now. What profit have I had of all that I have endured, putting my life in peril day after day? Even as a bird carries food to its nestlings till they are fledged, and never ceases to work for them, and herself is but ill fed, so it has been with me. Many nights have I been without sleep, and I have laboured many days. I took 12 cities to which I travelled in ships, and 11 to which I travelled by land, and from all I carried away much spoil. All this spoil I brought to King Agamemnon, and he, who all the time stayed safe in his tent, gave a few things to me and to others, but kept the greater part for himself. And then what did he do? He left to the other chiefs that which he had given to them, but what he had given to me, that he took from me. Yes, he took Briseis. Let him keep her if he will, but let him not ask me any more to fight against the Trojans. There are other chiefs whom he has not wronged and shamed in this way. Let him go to them and take counsel with them, how he may keep away the devouring fire from the ships. Many things he has done already. He has built a wall, and dug a ditch about it. Can he not keep Hector from the ships with them? And yet, in the time past when I used to fight, this Hector dared not set his army in array far from the walls of Troy. Nay, he scarce ventured to come outside the gates. Once, indeed, did he gather his courage together and stand up against me, to fight man with man, and then he barely escaped from my spear. But neither with him nor with any other of the sons of Troy will I fight again. Tomorrow I will do sacrifice to Zeus and to the other gods, and I will store my ships with food and water, and launch them on the sea. Yes, early in the morning tomorrow, if you care to look, you will see my ships upon the sea, and my men rowing with all their might. And if the gods of the sea give me good passage, on the 3rd day I shall come to my own dear country, even to Phthia. There the riches which I left behind me when I came to this land of Troy, and thither shall I carry such things, gold and silver and slaves, as King Agamemnon has not taken from me. But with him I will never take counsel again, nor will I stand by his side in battle. As for his gifts, I scorn them. Ay, and were they 20 times as great, I would scorn them still. Not with all the wealth of Thebes, which is in the land of Egypt, would he persuade me. And then Thebes, there is no wealthier city in all the world. 100 gates it has, and through each gate 200 warriors ride forth to battle with chariots and horses. And as for his daughter whom he would give me to be my wife, I would not marry her. No, not though she was as beautiful as Aphrodite herself, and as skilled in all the works of the needle as Athena. Let him choose for his son-in-law some chief of the Greeks who is better than I am. As for me, if the gods suffer me to reach my home, my father Peleus shall choose me a wife. Many maidens, daughters of kings, are there in Phthia and in Hellas, and not one among them who would scorn me if I came a-wooing. Often in times past I have thought to do this thing, to marry a wife, and to settle down in peace, and to enjoy the riches of the old man my father, and such things as I have gathered for myself. For long since my mother, Thetis of the sea, said to me, "My son, there are 2 lots of life before you, and you may choose which you will. If you stay in this land and fight against Troy, then you must never go back to your own land, but will die in your youth. Only your name will live forever. But if you will leave this land and go back to your home, then shall you live long, even to old age, but your name will be forgotten. Once I thought fame was a better thing than life, but now my mind is changed, for indeed my fame is taken from me, seeing that King Agamemnon puts me to shame before all the people. And now I go away to my own land, and I counsel you to go also, for Troy you will never take. The city is dear to Zeus, and he puts courage into the hearts of the people. And take this answer back to the man who sent you. Find some other way of keeping Hector and the Trojans from the ships, for my help he shall not have. But let Phoenix stay with me this night, that he may go with me in my ship when I depart tomorrow. Nevertheless, if he choose rather to stay, let him stay, for I would not take him by force." And when Achilles had ended his speech, all the chiefs sat silent, so vehement was he.
End of the embassy to Achilles. Of the Iliad for boys and girls. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Lizzie Driver. The Iliad for boys and girls by Alfred J. Church. The story of Old Phoenix. After a while old Phoenix stood up and spoke, and as he spoke he shed many tears, for he was much afraid lest the ships of the Greeks should be burnt. "O Achilles," he said, "if you are indeed determined to go away, how can I stay here without you? Did not the old man Peleus your father make me your teacher, that I might show you both what you should say and what you should do, when he sent you from the land of Phthia to be with King Agamemnon? In those days, for all that you are now so strong and skilful in war, you were but a lad, knowing nothing of how warriors fight in battle, or of how they take counsel together. No, I cannot stay here without you. I would not leave you, no, not if the gods would make me young again, as when I came to the land of Phthia to be with Peleus your father. For at the first I lived in Hellas, and left it because the old man, my father, was angry with me. So angry was he that he cursed me, and prayed to Zeus and the other gods that no child of mine should ever sit upon his knees. And I too was very angry when I heard him say these words. Truly the thought came into my heart that I would fall upon him and slay him with the sword. But the gods were merciful to me, and helped me to put away this wicked thought out of my heart. So I gave up my anger, for I could not bear that men should say of me, 'See, there is the man who killed his own father.' But I was determined to go away from my father's house, and from the land of Hellas altogether. Then came my friends and my kinsmen, and made many prayers to me, beseeching me that I would not depart. But I would not listen to them. Then they would have kept me by force. 9 days and 9 nights they watched my father's house, eating the flesh of sheep and oxen and swine, and drinking wine without stint from my father's stores. They took turns to watch, and they kept up 2 fires without ceasing, one in the cloister that was round the house, and one before the great door. But on the 10th night, when the watchmen were overcome with sleep, and the fires were low, then I broke open the door of my chamber, for all that they had shut it fast with a knot that was hard to untie, and I leapt over the fence in the courtyard, and neither man nor maid saw me. So I escaped, and fled from Hellas, and came to Phthia to the old man Peleus your father. And your father was very kind to me, and was as a father to me. He gave me riches, and he gave me a kingdom, which I might rule under him. And also he trusted you to me, O Achilles, when you were but a little child, that I might teach you and rear you, and this I did. And indeed you loved me much. With no one but me would you go into the hall or sit at the feast. I would hold you on my knees, and carve the choicest bits for you from the dish, and put the wine cup to your lips. Many a time have you spoiled my clothes, buttering out the wine from your lips, when I'd put the cup to your lips. Yes, I suffered much, and toiled much for you, and you were as a child to me, for a child of my own I never had. And now, I pray you, listen to me. Put away the anger in your heart, even as I put the anger out of mine. It is not fit that a man should harden his heart in this way. Even the gods are turned from their purpose. And surely the gods are more honourable and more powerful than you. Yet men turn them by offering of incense, and by drink offerings, and by burnt offerings, and by prayers. And if a man sins against them, yet can he turn them from their anger. For indeed, prayers are the daughters of Zeus. They are weak and slow of foot,
whereas sin is swift and strong, and goes before, running all over the earth, and doing harm to men. But, nevertheless, they come after and heal the harm that sin has done. If, therefore, a man will reverence these daughters of Zeus, and will do honour to them when they come near to him, and will listen to their voice, they will bless him and do good to him. But if a man hardens his heart against them, and will not listen to their voice, then they curse him and bring him ruin. Take heed, therefore, O Achilles, that thou do such honour to these daughters of Zeus as becomes a righteous man, for it will be well for you to do so. If indeed King Agamemnon had stood apart and given you no gifts, nor restored to you that which he took from you, then I would not have bidden you to cease from your anger, no, not to save the Greeks from their great trouble. But now he gives you many gifts, and promises you yet more, and has sent an embassy to you, the wisest and noblest that there are in the whole army, and also dear friends of yours. Refuse not, therefore, to listen to their words. Listen now to this tale which I will tell you, that you may see how foolish a thing it is for a man, however great he may be, to shut his ears when prayers are made to him. Once upon a time there was a great strife between the Aetolians and the men who dwelt near to Mount Curum, and the cause of the strife was this. There was a great wild boar which laid waste to all the lands of Clydon, where the Aetolians dwelt. And Melegar, who was the king of the land, sent for hunters from all Greece, and they came from far and wide, bringing their dogs with them, for the beast was so great and fierce that it was not an easy thing to kill, but there was need of many hunters. Now among those that came was Atalanta, the fair maid of Arcadia. And when the beast was killed, then there was a great quarrel as to who should have the spoils, that is to say, the head and the hide. For Melegar gave them to the fair Atalanta, and when the brethren of his mother took them from her, then he slew them. But when his mother, Althea by name, heard that her own brethren were dead, then she cursed him, yea, even her own son. So it came to pass that there was a war between the Aetolians and the men of Mount Curum, for Althea and her brethren were of that land. And also the curse began to work, so that the quarrel became more fierce. Now, when in time past Melegar had fought among the Aetolians, there was none that could stand up against him, so great a warrior was he. But now, being very angry with his mother, he stood aside from the war, and would not help, sitting in his chamber apart. The men of Mount Curum therefore prevailed in the battle, and the Aetolians were driven into the city of Clydon, and there was a great din of war about the gates of the city, and great fear lest the enemy should break them down. Then first the elders of the city sent an embassy to him, priests of the gods, the holiest that were in the land, to pray that he would come forth from his chamber and defend them. Also they promised him a noble gift, a great estate in the plain of Aetola, half ploughland and half vineyard, such as he might choose for himself. So the priests came beseeching him, and offering him the gift, but he would not listen to them. And after them came his mother and sisters, and made their prayers to him, but them he refused even more fiercely. And the old man Enus, his father, besought him, standing on the threshold of his chamber, and shaking the door. But he would not listen, nor would he hear the voices of his friends and comrades, although they were very dear to him. But at the last, when the enemy had now begun to climb up the towers, and to burn the fair city of Clydon with fire, ay, and to batter on the doors of his palace, then his wife, the fair Cleopatra, arose and besought him with many prayers and tears. Think now, she said, what woes will come upon your people, if the enemy prevail against them, for the city will be burnt with fire, and the men will be slain, and the women will be carried into captivity. Then at last his spirit was stirred within him, And he arose, and put on his arms, and went down into the street, and drove the men of Mount Curin before him. So did he save the Aetolians. But the gifts which they promised, these he never had. This, O Achilles, is the story of Malaga. Let not your thoughts be like his. It would be a foolish thing to put off saving of the ships, till they are already on fire. Come, therefore, take the gifts which King Agamemnon gives you. So shall all the Greeks honour you even as they honour a god. But if you delay, then you may lose both honour and gifts, even though you save us from the Trojans." Achilles answered, "Phoenix, my father, I have no need of this honour and these gifts. Riches I have as much as I need, and Zeus gives me honour. And listen to this. Trouble me no more with prayers and tears, while you seek to help King Agamemnon. Take not his side, lest I, who loves you now, come to hate you. It were better for you to vex him who has vexed me. Return now with me to the land of Phthia, and I will give you half of my kingdom. And stay this night in my tent. Tomorrow we will consult together whether we will depart or no." Then Achilles nodded to Patroclus, and made signs that he should make a bed ready for the old man, so that the other two, seeing this, should depart without delay. So Patroclus made the bed ready, and when Ajax saw this, he said to Ulysses, "Let us go, Ulysses. We shall do nothing today. Let us depart at once, and carry back this message to them who sent us. As for Achilles, he cherishes his anger, and cares naught for his comrades or his people. What he desires I know not. One man will take the price of blood from another, even though he has slain a brother or a son. He takes gold, and puts away his anger, and the shedder of blood dwells in peace in his own land. But this man keeps his anger, and all for the sake of a girl. And lo! the king offers him 7 girls, yea, 7 for one, and he will not take them. Surely he seems to lack reason." Achilles answered, "You speak well, great Ajax. Nevertheless the anger is yet hot in my heart, because Agamemnon put me to shame before all my people, as if I were but a common man. But go and take my message. I will not arise to do battle with the Trojans till Hector shall come to these tents, and shall seek to set fire to my ships. But when he shall do this, then I will arise, and verily I will stop him, however eager he may be for the battle." So Ajax and Ulysses departed, and gave the message of Achilles to King Agamemnon. End of the story of Old Phoenix. 15 of the Iliad for boys and girls. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Lizzie Driver. The Iliad for Boys and Girls by Alfred J. Church. The Adventures of Diomedes and Ulysses. While the other chiefs of the Greeks were sleeping that night, King Agamemnon was awake, for he had great trouble in his heart and many fears. When he looked towards Troy, he saw the fires burning, and heard the sound of flutes and pipes, and the murmurs of many men. And he was astonished, for it seemed to him that the army of the Trojans was greater and stronger than it had ever been in times past. And when he looked towards the ships, he groaned and tore his hair, thinking what evils might come to his people. Then he thought to himself, "I will go and look for old Nestor. Maybe he and I will think of something which may help us." So he rose from his bed, and put the sandals on his feet, and wrapped his coat about him, and put the skin of a lion round his shoulders, and a spear in his hand. Now it so happened that Menelaus could not sleep that same night, for he knew that it was on his account that the Greeks had come to Troy. So he arose from his bed, and wrapped the skin of a leopard about his shoulders, and took a spear in his hand, and went to look for his brother. And when he found him, for, as has been said, he also had armed himself,
He said,
"What seek you? See you the Trojans there? Let us send some spy to find what they are doing, and how many there are of them, for I do not doubt that they are planning something against us. But is there anyone who will dare to do such a thing? For indeed it is a great danger." Agamemnon answered, "It is true, my brother, that we are in great trouble, and need great advice if we are to save the people. Surely Zeus has greatly changed his mind concerning us. There was a time when he favoured us, but now it is of his doing that Hector drives us before him in this fashion. Never did I see a man so manifestly strengthened by Zeus, and yet he is but a man, having neither a god for his father, nor goddess for his mother. But go now, call the chiefs to council, and I will go to Nestor." So the chiefs were called, and Nestor said, "First, let us see whether the watch are sleeping or waking." So they went the round of the wall, and found the watchman not sleeping but waking, as a dog that hears the sound of a wild beast in the wood. So they looked towards the plain, thinking to hear the feet of the Trojans. Old Nestor was glad to see them, and said, "You do well, my children, lest we become a prey to our enemies." After this they passed over the trench, and sat down in an open place that was clear of dead bodies, for here it was that Hector returned back from slaying the Greeks, when darkness came over the earth. And Nestor rose up and said, "Is there now a man who will go among the Trojans and spy out what it is in their mind to do? Such a one will win great honour to himself, and the king will give him many gifts." Diomed stood up in his place and said, "I will go, but it is well that I should have some one with me, for to have a companion gives a man courage and comfort. Also 2 wits are better than 1.
Many men were willing to go with Diomed, and Agamemnon, fearing for his brother Menelaus, for he offered himself among others, said,
"Choose, O Diomed, the man whom you would most desire to have with you. Think not of any man's birth or rank. Choose only him who you would like best for a companion."
Then Diomed said,
"If I may have my choice, Ulysses shall go with me. He is brave and he is prudent, and Athena loves him."
Ulysses answered,
"Do not praise me too much, nor blame me too much, but let us go, for the night is far spent."
So the two armed themselves. Diomed took a 2-edged sword and a shield, and a helmet without a crest, for such is not easy to be seen. Ulysses took a bow with a quiver full of arrows, and a sword, and for a helmet a cap of hide, with the white teeth of a boar round it. Then they both prayed to Athena that she would help them. That being done, they set out and went through the night, like 2 lions, and they trod on dead bodies and arms and blood. Meanwhile Hector was thinking about the same thing, how that it would be well to find out what the Greeks were doing, and what they were planning for the next day. So he called the chiefs of the Trojans and the allies to a council, and said, "Who now will go and spy among the Greeks, and see whether they are keeping a good watch, and find out, if he can overhear them talking together, what they mean to do tomorrow? Such a man shall have a great reward, a chariot, that is to say, with 2 horses, the best that there is in the whole camp of the Greeks." Then there stood up a certain Dolon. He was the son of a herald, the only son of his father, but he had 5 sisters. He was an ill-favoured man, but a swift runner. Dolon said, "I will go, O Hector, but I want a great reward, even the horses of Achilles, for these are the best in the whole camp of the Greeks. Do you lift up your sceptre and swear that you will give me these, and none other." It was a foolish thing, for who was Dolon that he should have the chariot and horses of the great Achilles? And Hector knew this in his heart. Nevertheless he lifted up his sceptre and swore that he would give to Dolon these horses and none others. Then Dolon armed himself. He took his bow and a cap of wolfskin for his helmet, and a sharp spear, and went on his way. Nor did he try to go quickly, for he did not think that anyone from the camp of the Greeks would be abroad.
So Ulysses heard his steps and said to Diomed, "Here comes a man. Maybe he is a spy. Maybe he is come to spoil the dead bodies. Let him pass by, that we may take him, for we must not suffer him to go back to the city." So the two lay down among the dead bodies on the plain, and Dolon passed by them, not knowing that they were there. And after he had gone 50 yards or so, then they rose up and ran after him. He heard the noise of running, and stood still, thinking to himself, "Hector has sent men after me. Perhaps he wishes me to go back." And this indeed he would have gladly done, for he was beginning to be afraid. But when they were but a spear's throw from him, he saw that they were Greeks, and fled. And the two ran after him, as two dogs follow a fawn or a hare. And though he was swift of foot, he could not outrun them, nor could they come up to him, but they kept him from turning back to the city. But when they were near the trench, then Diomed called out to the man, "Stop, or I will slay you with my spear." And he threw his spear, not meaning to kill the man, but to frighten him, making it pass over his shoulder, so that it stood in the ground before him. When Dolon saw the spear, he stood still, and his teeth chattered with fear. And the two came up behind him, breathing hard, for they had been running fast. Then said Dolon, weeping as he spoke, "Do not kill me. My father will pay a great ransom for me, if he hears that you are keeping me at your ships. Much gold and bronze and iron will he pay for me." Ulysses answered, "Be of good cheer. Tell us truly why you were coming through the darkness. Was it to spoil the dead? Or did Hector send you to spy out what was going on at the ships? Or was it on some private business of your own?" Dolon answered, "Hector persuaded me to go, promising that he would give me the chariot and horses of Achilles, and I was to spy out what you had in your minds to do on the morrow, and whether you were keeping watch." Ulysses laughed when the man spoke of the chariot and horses of Achilles. "Truly," he said, "it was a grand reward that you deserved. The horses of Achilles are hard to manage, except a man be the son of a god or a goddess. But tell me, where is Hector, and what watch does the Trojans keep?" Dolon answered, "When I came away from the camp of the Trojans, Hector was holding council with the chiefs close to the tomb of Ilus. As for the watchers, there are none set, except in that part of the camp where the Trojans are. As for the allies, they sleep without caring for watches, thinking that the Trojans will do that for them." Then Ulysses asked again, "Do the allies then sleep among the Trojans or apart?" Then Dolon told him about the camp, who were in this place and who were in that. "But," he went on, "if you would know where you may best make your way into the camp and not be seen, go to the furthest part of the left. There are newcomers, men from Thrace, with Rhesus their king. Never have I seen horses so big and so fine as his, and they are whiter than snow, and swifter than the wind. But now send me to the ships, or if you cannot do that, having no one to take me, bind me and leave me." But Diomed said, "Think not, Dolon, that we will suffer you to live, though indeed you have told us that which we desired to know. For then you would come again to spy out our camp, or, maybe, would fight with us in battle. But if we kill you, then you will trouble us no more." So they killed him, and stripped him of his arms. These they hung on a tamarisk tree that there was in the place, making a mark with reeds and branches, that they might know the place when they came back. Then they went on to the camp of the Trojans, and found the place of which Dolon had told them. There the men of Thrace lay asleep, each man with his arms at his side, and in the midst of the company lay King Rhesus, with his chariot at his side, and the horses tethered to the rail of the chariot. Then Diomed began to slay the men as they slept. He was like a lion in the middle of a fold full of sheep, so fierce and strong was he, and they so helpless. 12 men he slew, and as he slew them Ulysses dragged their bodies out of the way, that there might be a clear road for the horses. For horses are wont to start aside when they see a dead body lying in the way. And "these may be," so he thought to himself, are not used to war. 12 men did Diomed slay, and King Rhesus the 13th, as he lay and panted in his sleep, for he had a bad dream at the very time Diomed slew him. Meanwhile Ulysses had unbound the horses from the chariot, and driven them out of the camp. With his bow he struck them, for he had not thought to take the whip from the chariot. And when he had got the horses clear, then he whistled, for a sign to Diomed that he should come without more delay, for well he knew that Diomed would not easily be satisfied with slaying. And truly the man was lingering, doubting whether he might not kill yet more. But Athena whispered in his ear, "Think of your return. Maybe some god will rouse the Trojans against you." And indeed Apollo was rousing them. The cousin of King Rhesus awoke, and seeing the place of the horses empty, cried out, calling the king. So all the camp were roused. But Diomed and Ulysses mounted the horses, and rode to the camp of the Greeks. Right glad were their comrades to see them, and to hear the tale of what they had done. End of the Adventures of Diomed and Ulysses. Of the Iliad for boys and girls. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Lizzie Driver. The Iliad for Boys and Girls by Alfred J. Church. The Wounding of the Chiefs. As soon as it was light, Agamemnon called the Greeks, and Hector called the Trojans to battle, nor were either unwilling to obey. For a time the fighting was equal, but at noon, at the time when a man who is cutting down trees upon the hill grows weary of his work and longs for food, then the Greeks began to prevail. And the first man to break through the lines of the Trojans was King Agamemnon. Never before had the king done such mighty deeds, for he drove the Trojans back to the very walls of the city. Hector himself did not dare to stand up before him, for Iris brought this message to him from Zeus: "So long as Agamemnon fights in the front, do you hold back, for this is the day on which it is his lot to win great honour for himself. But when he shall be wounded, then do you go forward, and you shall have strength to drive the Greeks before you till they come to the ships, and the sun shall set." So Hector held back, and after a while the king was wounded. There were 2 sons of Antenor in one chariot, and they came against him. First the king threw his spear at the younger of the 2, but missed his aim. Then the Trojan thrust at Agamemnon with his spear, driving it against his breastplate. With all his strength he drove it, but the silver which was in the breastplate turned the spear, so that it bent as if it had been of lead. Then the king caught the spear in his hand, and drove it through the neck of his adversary, so that he fell dead from the chariot. But when the elder brother saw this, he also thrust at the king with his spear. Nor did he thrust in vain, but he pierced his arm beneath the elbow. But him also did the king slay, wounding him first with his spear, and afterwards cutting off his head with his sword. For a time, while the wound was warm, the king still fought, but when it grew cold and stiff, then the pain was greater than he could bear, and he said to his charioteer, "Now carry me back to the ships, for I cannot fight any more." The next of the chiefs that was wounded was Diomed. Him Paris wounded with an arrow, as he was stripping the arms from a Trojan which he had slain. For Paris hid himself behind the pillar which stood on the tomb of Iliad, and shot his arrows from thence. On the ankle of his right foot did Paris hit him, and when he saw that he had not shot the arrow in vain, he cried aloud, "I wish that I had wounded you in the loin, bold Diomed, then you would have troubled the men of Troy no more." But Diomed answered, "If I could but meet you face to face, you coward, your bow and your arrows would not help you. As for this graze on my foot, I care no more for it than if a woman or a child had struck me. Come near, and I will show you what are the wounds which I make with my spear." Then he beckoned to Ulysses, that he should stand before him while he drew the arrow from his foot. And Ulysses did so. But when he had drawn out the arrow, the pain was so great that he could not stand up, for all the brave words that he had spoken, and he bade his charioteer drive him back to the ships. So Ulysses was left alone. Not one of the chiefs stood by him, for now that King Agamemnon and Diomed had departed, there was great fear upon all the Greeks. And Ulysses said to himself, "Now, what shall I do? It would be a shameful thing to fly from these Trojans, though there are many of them, and I am alone. But it would be worse still if I were to be taken here and slain. Surely it is the doing of Zeus that this trouble is come upon the Greeks. And who am I that I should fight against Zeus? Yet why do I talk in this way? It is only the coward who draws back. A brave man stands in his place, whether he lives or dies." But while he was thinking these things, many Trojans came about him, as dogs come about a wild boar in the wood, and the boar stands at bay, and gnashes his big white teeth. So Ulysses stood, thrusting here and there with his long spear. 5 chiefs he slew, but one of the 5, before he was slain, wounded him in the side, scraping the flesh from the ribs. Then Ulysses cried out for help. 3 times he cried, and the 3rd time Menelaus heard him and called to Ajax. "O Ajax, I hear the voice of Ulysses, and it sounds like the voice of one who is in great trouble. Come, let us help him, for it would be a great loss to the Greeks if he were to come to harm." Then he led the way to the place from which the voice seemed to come, and Ajax followed him. And when they came to Ulysses, they found it was as Menelaus had said. For the Trojans had beset Ulysses as the jackals beset a deer with long horns among the hills. The beast cannot fly because the hunter has wounded it with an arrow from his bow, and the wound has become stiff, and he stands at bay. Then a lion comes, and the jackals are scattered in a moment. So the Trojans were scattered when Ajax came. Then Menelaus took Ulysses by the hand and led him out of the throng, while Ajax drove the Trojans before him. And now yet another chief was wounded, for Paris, from his hiding place behind the pillar on the tomb of Ilus, shot an arrow at Machaon, and wounded him on the right shoulder. And one of the chiefs cried to old Nestor, who was fighting close by, "Quick, Nestor, take Machaon in your chariot, and drive him to the ships, for the life of a physician is worth the lives of many men." So Nestor took Machaon in his chariot, and touched his horses with the whip, and they galloped to the ships. Now Hector was fighting on the other side of the plain, and his charioteer said to him, "See how Ajax is driving our people before him. Let us go and stop him." So they went, lashing the horses that they might go faster, and the chariot rolled over many bodies of men, and the axle and the sides of it were red with blood. Then Zeus put the fear into the heart of the great Ajax himself. He would not fly, but he turned round, throwing his great shield over his shoulder, and moved towards the ships slowly, step by step. It was as when an ass breaks into a field and eats the standing corn, and the children of the village beat him with sticks. Their arms are weak, and the sticks are broken on the beast's back, for he is slow in going, nor do they drive him out till he has eaten his fill. So the Trojans thrust at Ajax their lances, and now he would turn and face them, and now he would take a step backwards towards the ships. Now Achilles was standing on the stern of his ship, looking at the battle, and Patroclus stood by him. And when old Nestor passed by taking Machaon to the ships, Achilles said to his friend, "Soon, I think, will the Greeks come and pray me to help them, for they are in great trouble. But go now, and see who was this whom Nestor is taking to the ships. His shoulders, I thought, were the shoulders of Machaon, but his face I could not see, for the horses went by very fast." Then Patroclus ran to do his errand. Meanwhile Nestor took Machaon to his tent, and there the girl that waited on the old man mixed for them a bowl of drink.
First she set a table, and laid on it a bronze charger, and on it she put a flask of wine and a leek with which to flavour it, and yellow honey and barley meal. And she fetched from another part of the tent a great bowl with 4 handles. On each side of the bowl there were a pair of handles, and on each handle there was a dove wrought in bronze, and the doves seemed to be pecking at each other. A very big bowl it was, and, when it was full, so heavy that a man could scarcely lift it from the table. But Nestor, though he was old, could lift it easily. Then the girl poured the wine from the flask into the bowl, and put honey into it, and shredded cheese made from goat's milk, and the leek to flavour it. And when the mess was ready she bade them drink, so they drank and talked together. But while they talked Patroclus stood in the door of the tent, and Nestor went to him and took him by the hand and said, "Come now, and sit down with us, and drink from the bowl." But Patroclus would not. "Stay me not," he said. "I came to see who it was whom you brought wounded out of the battle, and now that I see it is Machaon, therefore I will go back without delay, for you know what kind of man is Achilles, how he quickly grows angry and is ready to blame." Then said Nestor, "What does Achilles care about the Greeks? Why does he ask who are wounded? Oh, Patroclus, do you remember the day when Ulysses and I came to the house of Peleus? Your father was there, and we feasted in the hall, and when the feast was finished, then we told Peleus why we had come, how we were gathering the chiefs of Greece to go and fight against Troy, and you and Achilles were eager to go. And old men gave you much advice. Old Peleus said to Achilles, 'You must always be the very first in battle.' But to you your father said, 'Achilles is of nobler birth than you, and he is stronger by far. But you are older, and your years give wisdom. Therefore it will be your part to give him good counsel when there is need. Why then do you not advise him to help us? And if he is still resolved not to go forth to the battle, then let him send you forth, and let him lend you his armour to wear. Then the Trojans will think that Achilles himself has come back to the battle, and they will be afraid, and we shall have a breathing space.' Then Patroclus turned and ran back to the tent of Achilles. End of the wounding of the chiefs. Section 17 of the Iliad for boys and girls. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Lizzie Driver. The Iliad for boys and girls by Alfred J. Church. The battle at the wall. Now, by this time, the Trojans were close upon the trench. But there they stood, for the horses were afraid, the trench being deep, and having great stakes set in. Then Polydamas, who was one of the wisest of the Trojans, said to Hector, "This is but a mad thing, O Hector, to try to cross the trench in our chariots, for it is wide and has many stakes set in it. Look too at this. How will it be when we have crossed it? If indeed it is the pleasure of Zeus that the Greeks should perish utterly, well. But if, as has come to pass before, not once only, the Greeks take heart and turn upon us and drive us back, what shall we do? Nay, let us leave our chariots here, and if need be, we can come back and find them waiting for us. But we will go on foot against the wall." So they jumped down from their chariots and went against the walls on foot. In 5 companies they went. The first was the largest and had the bravest of the Trojans. Hector himself led, and the next was commanded by Paris. The third was led by Helenus the prophet, and with him was Deiphobus, who also was a son of King Priam, and Asus one of the allies, who was king of Arisbe. Of the fourth Aeneas was the leader, and of the fifth Sarpedon of Lycia with Glaucus, and others among the allies. They stood closely to each other, holding shield by shield, and so they went against the Greeks. All of them also left their chariots on this side of the trench, all except King Asus only. But he drove his chariot to a place where there was a road over the trench, and on the other side a gate.
and this gate chanced to be open, for the keepers had set it open, so that any of the Greeks who were flying from the Trojans might find refuge inside it. When the keepers, who were two mighty men of valour, saw Acis and his company coming, they went forward and stood in front of the gate, for they had not time to shut it. There they stood, just as two wild boars might stand at bay against a crowd of men and dogs. And all the while the men who stood on the wall never ceased to throw down heavy stones on the Trojans. The stones fell as fast as the flakes of snow fall on a winter's day, and the helmets and shields of the Trojans rang out as the stones crashed upon them. Many fell to the ground, and King Acis, for all his fury, could not make his way through the gate. At another of the gates, where Hector was leading his company, there was seen a very strange thing in the skies. An eagle had caught a great snake, and was carrying it in his claws, to give it to its young ones for food. But the snake fought fiercely for its life, and wreathed itself about till it bit the bird upon the breast. And when the eagle felt that it had been bitten, it dropped the snake into the middle of the two armies, and flew away with a loud cry. Then Polydamas, who was a wise man, and knew the meaning of all such signs, said to Hector, "O Hector, it will be well for us not to follow the Greeks to their ships, for this strange thing which we have just seen in the sky is a sign to us. The eagle signifies the Trojans, and the snake signifies the Greeks. Now, as the eagle caught the snake but could not hold it, so have we prevailed over the Greeks, but shall not be able to conquer them altogether. And as the snake turned upon the bird and bit it, so the Greeks turn upon us and do us great damage, so that we shall be driven back from the ships, and leave many of our comrades dead behind us." But Hector was angry to hear such words, and said, "This is bad advice that you give me. Surely the gods have changed your wisdom into foolishness. Would you have me forget the commandment of Zeus, when he bade me to follow the Greeks even to their ships, and to take heed to birds, and do one thing or another because they fly this way or that? Little do I care whether they fly east or west, or are seen on the right hand or on the left. Surely there is but one sign for a brave man, that he be fighting for his fatherland. Take heed therefore to yourself. Truly, if you hold back from the war, or cause any other man to hold back, I will smite you with my spear." Then he sprang forward, and the Trojans followed him with a great shout. And Zeus sent down from Mount Ida a great wind, and the wind carried the dust of the plain straight into the faces of the Greeks, troubling them not a little. But when the Trojans sought to drag down the battlements which were on the wall, and to pull up the stakes which had been set to strengthen it, they could not, for the building was strong, and the Greeks stood firm in their place, with shield joining to shield, and fought for the wall. After a while Sarpedon the Lycian came to the front, for Zeus put it in his heart to do so, that he might win great glory for himself. He came holding a shield before him, and with a long spear in either hand, just as a lion, when he is mad with hunger, goes against a stable in which oxen are kept, or against a sheepfold, and does not care though it is guarded by many men and dogs. So did Sarpedon go against the wall. And he spoke to Glaucus his kinsman, saying, "Tell me, Glaucus, why is it that our people at home honour us with the chief places at feasts, and with fat portions of flesh, and with wine of the best, and they have set apart for us a great domain of orchard and of ploughland by the banks of the Xanthus? Surely it is that we may fight in the front ranks, and show to others how they should behave in the battle. For so some one who may see us will say, 'Of the truth these are honourable men, these princes of Lycia, and not without good do they eat the fat and drink the sweet, for they are always to be seen fighting in the front. Maybe, if we could hope to live for ever, and escape from old age and death, I would not either fight myself in the front or bid you to do so. But now, seeing that there are 10,000 chances of death about us, let us see whether we may not win glory from another, or haply another may win it from us.' When he had spoken he leapt forward,
and Glaucus went with him, and all the host of the Lycians followed close behind. Then the keeper of the gates, he was a man of Athens, was struck with great fear, and looked about for help. All along the wall he looked, and he saw Ajax the greater, and Ajax the less, and Teucer, for the hurt which Hector had given him was now healed. He would have shouted to them, but the din of arms, and the ringing of shields and helmets, and the battering of the gates, would have drowned his voice. So he called a herald and said, "Run now, and call Ajax hither, both the greater and the less, if it may be, for the danger is very great, and the chiefs of the Lycians press us hard. And if there is trouble there also, then let Ajax the greater come at the least, and Teucer with him, bringing his bow." So the herald ran with the message, and when Ajax the greater heard it, he said to the other Ajax, "Stand here, and keep off the enemy, and I will go yonder, and come again when I have done my work." So Ajax and Teucer his brother ran as quickly as they could to the gate, and just as they got to it the Lycians came against it with a great rush, as if it had been a storm of wind and rain. But still the Greeks stood firm, and Ajax slew one of the Lycian chiefs, and Teucer wounded Glaucus on the shoulder. Quietly he jumped down from the wall, for he did not wish that anyone should see that he was wounded. But Sarpedon saw it, and was sorry, because he was his kinsman, and also a great help in the battle. Nevertheless he pressed on as bravely as before. First he slew one of the Greeks upon the wall, and then he laid hold of one of the battlements with his 2 hands, and pulled it down, and a part of the wall with it. Thus there was made a way by which men might enter the camp. But Ajax and his brother stopped the Lycians for a time, aiming at Sarpedon, both of them together. Teucer struck at him with his spear, for the bow he could not use when the enemy was so near, and smote the strap of his shield, but did him no harm. Ajax drew his spear through the shield, and pushed him back so that he was forced to leap from the wall to the ground. But his courage was not one whit abated. He cried out, "Help me now, ye men of Lycia! It is hard for me, however great my strength, to do this work alone, pulling down the wall and making a way for you to the ships." And all of his people, when they heard his voice, came rushing up in a great crowd. But the Greeks, on the other hand, strengthened their line, others coming to the place where they saw the need to be the greatest, for indeed it was a matter of life and death. For a long time they fought with equal strength, for the Lycians could not break down the wall and make a way to the ships, and the Greeks could not drive the Lycians back. But at last Zeus gave the glory to Hector. Once again he sprang to the front, crying, "Now follow me, men of Troy, and we will burn the ships." In front of the gate there lay a great stone, broad at the bottom and sharp at the top. Scarcely could 2 men, the strongest that there are in these days, lift it on to a wagon. But Hector took it up as easily as a shepherd carries in one hand the fleece of a sheep. Now there were 2 folding doors in the middle of the gate, by which a man might enter without opening the gate. These doors were fastened by a bolt and a key. Then Hector lifted the great stone above his head, holding it with both his hands, and he put his feet apart, that his aim might be the surer and stronger, and threw with all his might at the doors. With a great crash did it come against them, and the bolts could not hold against it, and the hinges were broken, and the doors flew back. Then Hector leapt into the open space, holding a spear in either hand, and his eyes flashed with fire. And the Trojans followed him, some entering by the gate, and some climbing over the wall. End of the battle at the wall.